Hello and welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor live photo editing here on our YouTube channel. If you're new to our channel, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe because we do this every week. We're going to be changing the time and date because it's summer in the Northern Hemisphere and people want to be out and about on Saturday and enjoying the sun. So we're going to shift to Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So that translates to 2 a.m. in Europe, unfortunately, but we should be able to pick up those of you on Australia and New Zealand and Asia now. So we're changing up the time a bit, and our next broadcast is going to be on the 23rd. We'll put that information in the description below, and you'll see when the next one is scheduled. So what we're going to do today is I have several images that have been submitted by subscribers and followers, and you're going to be able to watch me edit them and see how I approach photo editing. What I look for in the image, what I want to choose to enhance and bring out, and things that I may want to fix. So generally what I use photo editing for is to enhance my images. So I take an image that I already think is good, that I like, and I enhance it. Okay, so I don't really use photo editing to fix things all that much, but there can be a fix for things such as removing an item that, a piece of trash or something in your image. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so I see our regulars are here, Nigel and Anne, and I've got images from both of you. Thank you. So we'll be working on those today. But I wanted to show you something really quick that I was working on yesterday because it's really fun. So take a look at this image of this lovely man in Turkey. He's Turkish. And really nice image, right? Nice bokeh, really pretty image. Well, guess what? I created it. So this is something that I'm actually working on for Skylum right now. I'm working on a set of portrait templates that are going to be on the Skylum marketplace, and also an idea that I had, which is a set of bokeh texture packs. So you'll be able to use a texture overlay and add in bokeh to your image. Okay, so it's really cool. I thought it was really fun and exciting, and I just wanted to share it with you. So let's take a look at the images we're going to edit today. I've got several here, and as I mentioned, I've got one from Nigel and one from Anne. So since you're both here, I'm going to start with that because Anne had to leave early last week. So I'm going to do Anne's image first. So again, those of you that are new, I generally use, in my own workflow, I use Lightroom probably 95% of the time for my editing. That's where I catalog my images. That's where I can find them all and sort them. I do my flagging, my picking, and so on. And then I do my editing mostly in Lightroom, but I will hop over to Luminar if I want to enhance it a little bit further, or Photoshop if I feel that I need to do a complex cloning out or edit. And in this case, I probably am going to use Photoshop. So this is an image Anne took in Cuba. If I had to guess, I know she was on our tour to Cuba last January, and I'm not even going to guess where, but they play chess everywhere there. So the first thing I'm going to do is, once I get into the develop module in Lightroom, is I want to play with the camera profile or the color profile. Okay, so up at the top here, I'm in the basic panel. Okay, so if you don't see this, go to the basic panel. And if your Lightroom looks different than mine, make sure that you are using Lightroom Classic. Okay, so notice that I see up in the top left here that it says Lightroom Classic. If you don't see that, you may see that it says Lightroom Only or Lightroom CC, which is the cloud version. They look very different. Okay, so if you don't see the same tools that I'm seeing, double check that you're not using cloud version. Okay, so I'm demonstrating Classic. So once I get into here, in this little camera profile section, that you can see that there's Adobe Raw. So these are Adobe profiles. Okay, so it comes sort of, I think I've already changed this one to landscape. Generally, the one that you get applied as a default is Adobe Color. Okay, and you can see that it's kind of flat. It's kind of lacking color. oftentimes you can choose a better color for your image just by changing this profile. Okay, so look what happens as I hover my mouse over. Look at the landscape one. Okay, his shirt really pops in this one. Portrait, slightly different red. Okay, so see how big the changes are, even standard. So these are camera matching profiles because Lightroom has recognized the camera that she's using, which I believe is Canon, and these are the profiles that come for that camera. Okay, so if you're looking in your camera and you're shooting different camera picture styles, these are the same names. Okay, I think I'm going to choose either the landscape or the standard one. Okay, so he's got a lot more color on his face in standard, and I'm just sort of hovering over. This one's got his shirt really bright red, so I'm not entirely sure I want the shirt so red. I'm going to go with standard. Okay. I'm assuming everybody can see my screen okay. They haven't said they can't. Nobody said they can't, so I'm going to continue unless you tell me that you're having trouble seeing the screen. Okay, so first thing we've done, change the profile. All right, the next thing I want to do is a trick that I often do, which is shift double click. Okay, so that is holding the shift key and go to the slider where the whites and the blacks, okay, and I'm going to click on the word. So hold the shift key, double click whites, double click blacks. Okay, now you see what that did is it moved them out to the ends, and what it's done is it spread the graph out so that I now have pure white in the picture and pure black. And you can check it by clicking the Alt key and the slider at the same time. I might do a little bit more black. So you want blacks clipping, you don't want whites clipping. Okay, so if you've got whites clipping, pull it back down to the left, which is darker. Okay. In this case, the edge of the phone clipping, I'm not too worried about. Okay, so when I say clipping, it means no detail. Okay, so if I was to drag this up like this, you're not going to see any detail in the marble or the difference between like this area here. Okay, if you want to see the clipping all the time, just press J on the keyboard. That's the keyboard shortcut for the clipping or highlight warnings. You can also click up here on the histogram individually on the shadows and the highlights. Okay, so the shadows show in blue right here. If I turn that off, you can see that. So that's clipping, and the highlights show in red. Right? So of course I don't want that, so I'm just going to dial it back. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to brighten the whole thing up a little bit. So keep in mind, exposure affects the midtones. Okay, so when I grab the histogram, I can actually drag it right from here, and you'll notice that it's adjusting the exposure slider. Okay, can you see that? Watch the exposure slider, and I'm grabbing the middle of the graph. Okay, if I grab here, that's shadows, and it's going to affect the shadow slider. So what I'm doing is clicking, holding, and dragging. In this case, I don't want to affect the shadows so much, but I do want to bring the midtones up. And I do this for a reason, because a lot of people have a misconception that exposure affects the bright areas or the whole image, but it's really affecting the midtones more so. Okay, so it's dragging the histogram. Think of it as dragging it and grabbing it like I just did, grabbing it here and pushing it up, but from this area. Okay, if I grab the end here, which is white, it only drags the right side of the graph. Okay, so see how it's pulling the white slider? Like that. Okay. Let's make sure I've got detail in all the whites. Perfect. Okay, so now we've just done some basic adjustments. Okay, so before, a little bit dark, after we punched it up a little bit. Sorry about that. I had a sneeze. I spared you from my sneeze. All right, I'm going to pull it down a little bit, and I want to give it a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to give it a little bit more blacks. I usually bring clarity up to about 10 to 15. And what I want to do in this image is really get the focus on this guy and the chessboard. Okay, so there's a leg sticking out over here. So I could crop this a little bit. Let's crop in from the right. So I'm going to go freeform crop. I'm not worrying about the aspect ratio. I'm going to come in a little bit from the bottom as well. I don't need to see the edge. And I might even come in from the top to crop into his head. Okay, so I'm not concerned about that. So that gets rid of the leg over there. But there's a lot of distracting elements in the picture. So what I want to do with the editing is to try and tone those down and bring the focus over to this guy and the chessboard. So one thing I can do is a radial filter. Okay, so you can get to the radial filter here on this toolbar, or you can go up to Tools, Radial Filter, or I use a keyboard shortcut, which is Shift M. Rob, if you could please share the article with them where they can get the free download of the Lightroom keyboard shortcuts. My brain's not working today. Need some more coffee. So you could go to this article that I've written before, and there's a PDF for you that you could download, print out the sheet, and it's got these keyboard shortcuts that I'm using you can put on your desk. So I'm going to make a radial filter. So you'll see this crosshairs. So you just have to click and drag, and then you can rotate it, move it around. And what I want to do is I want to get it so that it's on his face and the chessboard. Okay. Right now, let's see if it's on the inside or the outside. Okay. So if you're not sure if the effects that you're doing are applying to the inside of the circle or the outside, just press O on the keyboard. So that's overlay, and that will show you where it's applying. So I'm actually going to do the opposite. So I'm going to invert it, and then I'm going to reset everything. So double click the word effect, and that resets all the sliders. Now I'm going to lower the exposure so you can see what it's doing. Okay, so I'm going to lower the exposure. I'm going to lower the highlights, and I might make the circle a little bigger. Now, it's not perfect, and I'll show you how I'm going to fix that in a minute, okay? Because it's also making sure that this part of the grass doesn't get darkened and it's got a lot of attention, okay? So we can fix that a couple of different ways. So I want to make sure I get this guy and the chessboard, okay? So about like that. So I'm darkening. But I can also do things like lower texture, okay? So see what happens with this grass over here, okay? So I'm lowering the texture. So the things that grab your eye when you look at an image are bright areas, so that's why I'm darkening. Areas of contrast, okay? I could lower the contrast as well. Areas of sharpness, okay, so that's that texture. I can also lower the sharpness and the clarity. So basically I'm sort of fuzzing everything else out around here, okay? So they're not as sharp. Now, it's applying to this other stuff over here, this man's phone and cigarettes and the other chess pieces, okay? So keep in mind that the effect that I've just created is applying to every area that's green right now, okay? If I don't want it to apply there, you can actually brush it in or out as part of the radial filter, okay? So the radial filter comes with a brush editor as well, and I can just choose erase down here. Get a nice big brush, and I'm just going to erase it off this area a little bit, okay? So I can see the chess pieces a little better. They're not getting as dark. Let's turn that off, the overlay. Okay, so now you can see that the effect is applying over there. But remember I said this area here is too bright. So that's where the brush comes in. I'm still on the brush. Okay, so keep in mind this is not the adjustment brush, it's the radial filter with the brush adjustment. Okay, so they come together. So when I choose brush here, if I go to A and B, now I'm painting the effect in. Okay, so same thing I just did where I painted it out with erase, I'm going to paint it in here. So you can see that the grass is getting darker, and I'll just make sure that I can use auto mask. Okay, so auto mask helps me find the edge of things. Okay, so as I'm painting, you can see that where I go with the little crosshairs, it's applying to the grass, but I want to get it in here as well. Okay, so make it look realistic. And that auto mask, as long as I keep the crosshairs off of him, it helps me to find the edge. Right? So now let's just take it really far so you can see where I've painted. Right? Now I do this on purpose because I want to see if I've missed anything. Okay, so I'd probably make an even smaller brush and get in here on the edge like this. So I want to make sure I'm not getting these weird halos, okay? And let's get the edge of the grass here, like so. And I'm using that extra dark. I've made it super dark so that you can see it. Then I just turn it up a little bit. All right. Okay. Excuse me a moment. I have to let my cat out the room. Cats are always on the wrong side of the door. All right, let me get back over here. All right, there. Now you can see me again. I'm not sneezing. So let's take a look at where we're at here. Okay, I'm going to close the radial filter. I use radial filters a lot because it allows me to grab a large area and affect it. Okay, so what's happening is the original image has lots of busyness. The road, the yellow line we're going to fix next, the grass and all the texture is taking attention away from the guy, okay? He's concentrating on his move. If you're a master chess player, maybe you can take a look at the board and tell me who's going to win. I don't know. Okay, so to me, it looks like the white chess player is encroaching on the other one, but I could be completely off base. So if you're a master chess player, tell me who you think has got the better strategic position here. Okay, so that's where we're at now. And let's deal with that road. I could do another radial filter actually, okay, because you could do any number of radial filters. And I want to just brighten his face a little bit, okay. There's a number of presets that come with all of these, what's called a local adjustment. So that's what we're doing now. A local adjustment is one where you're doing just affecting just part of the image, okay? A global adjustment affects the entire image. And there's many of these that are built into Lightroom, okay? So there's lots of stuff up here. Dodge face is one that I use a lot, and I've edited it. It comes built in with Lightroom, but I've edited it for my own purposes, okay? So I lower the blacks a little bit because I find that if you just increase the exposure and the shadows, it makes it look a little flat. Okay, so I also increase the whites and lower the blacks. Let's just see what those are doing. Okay, so you can see that I'm really bringing focus into this man. Okay, keyboard shortcut, Shift M to close it. All right, so now I want to deal with that yellow line. Lightroom does not do a very good job of cloning. I could probably start it in here. I'm just going to turn off this green mouse here so you can see my circles. So Lightroom does not do a really great job of healing and cloning, okay? So I'm using this tool here, the healing cloning tool, right? Keyboard shortcut Q on this one. Why Q? I have no idea, right? And I'm using the square bracket keys to make it smaller. Oops. There we go. I pressed the wrong button. Okay, so square bracket key, right to make it larger and left to make it smaller. So I'm looking for my circle to be just bigger than this little yellow line. So I'm going to start over here and I'm just going to draw. Okay, so if you just click, you'll get a circle, but you can draw. So what I want to do is move around the source area. Okay, let me do that again. Okay, so if you just click, you see how it says from here to here. You see there's an arrow. Okay, so this is the source area. This is the target area. And you can move either of them around. So you can say I want to clone from there to there or vice versa. Okay, you also have the choice of cloning or healing. Okay, so this one here is healing. So the difference is when you're using the healing tool, Lightroom is going to try and sort of blend it in. Okay, if I'm using the cloning tool, it copies exactly. Okay, so you can see that there's a hard circle and it copies it exactly, right? So if I go down here into the grass, you'll see the grass show up there. But if I go to heal, it sort of blends it in a little bit different, okay? So for the most part, if I want to get rid of something like this, I'm going to use heal. You can also affect the opacity, the feather, and the size. Okay. So again, if I click, I got a circle, but I'm going to click and draw. Okay. So I'm going to draw a small line, and you can see that it's chosen the source area here and the target area here, which is not what I want. So I want to source it up here in the gray area to try and get rid of that line. Okay. Now, if you move your mouse over to the sidebar, you'll see the dots disappear. Okay. So you can just see the image. So I'm going to do it little by little. Then I'm going to draw another line. So once again, it's chosen the wrong spot. So I'm just moving it. And then once I get it where I want it, I can position it even more because I want them to blend together. Okay, so if you have a line here, you can't start drawing on an overlap. So what you do is you draw over here, and then you just have to move it over. Okay, so you can eventually get them overlapping like so, but you can't draw it overlapping. Okay, so you can see how tedious this process is, right? So, and it's not doing such a great job, right? So I'm actually going to reset that, and we're going to hop over to Photoshop. Okay. Do we have any questions about anything so far? Awesome. Okay. And it says, yes, nice to learn to play with the histogram directly. Absolutely. You can do that right there, the way I did with the click and drag. So to open this in Photoshop, and correct me if I'm wrong, Anne, but I'm pretty sure that she's using Photoshop. Oh, I've lost my mouse. Hang on, while I get my mouse back. There we go. Right, so right click the image, and then choose Edit In, okay, and Edit in Photoshop. Just like that. Perfect. Okay, so this is going to be good for you then, Anne. So I want to see if you can replicate what I'm doing with this image yourself. Okay, so I'd love to be able to see, or tell me if you can replicate it. Okay, so it's opening this image. Now you can see my bokehs. That's what I was creating. So I took an image that had some bokeh and I created it, made it a background overlay. All right, where are we? Okay, Photoshop. Need to have a drink of my coffee. Okay, so now I'm in Photoshop, and what I want to do is I want to make a selection of this yellow thing. There's a few ways that you can try and clone this out. Okay, you can use the clone and stamp tool, and I would set it to darken. Okay, so what that means is it's going to look for anything where I'm cloning that's lighter and darken it. Okay, and this will probably do a pretty good job. You can also adjust the opacity. So I'm going to go at 100%. And I'm using the square bracket keys again. So I'm going to make that circle, or the tool, the brush, just larger than that yellow line. Okay. Now with the clone and stamp tool, you have to choose your source first. So you click Alt, in this case, okay, and you see it change. Okay, so you see it change to a target. So I'm just above the yellow line. I click Alt, hold it, and then click right there. Okay, now it's like you can see when I move down here. Now I ran out of space here because my target was set too far to the right. So I'm going to go over here and reset it. Okay, so that's not bad. Again, when I get closer to his face, it's going to get trickier. Okay, so I've got to sort of deal with that. And also I've got like a duplicate of this. Okay, so one of the things you want to watch out for when you're cloning is cloning things twice or 3 times, so that you get a pattern repeating that makes it look really obvious that you've cloned it. Okay, so I've got this repeating and I've got that repeating. Okay, so I'm just going to undo that as well. Okay, so that's one way you can do it. Okay, another way you can do it is to use the healing tool, and let's see if that does a better job. Okay, I can also set that to darken. Okay, make my brush a little bigger. Okay, I'm going to go a bit higher here and choose my source, and then let's see how that goes. Okay, and then I'm just painting. Okay, like so. Oh, ran out again. Let's go there. So that's a little better because it's now healing okay, as opposed to cloning. So healing allows me to make it look a little bit more natural, right? Because it's trying to blend with the outside edge, okay? So that looks a little better, right? I'm going to do one more away, right? Keep on doing here. You could also use the patch tool, which is this guy here. So it looks like a patch that you would sew on your jeans, right? And you select the area that you want to get rid of, okay? So you just draw around it. That wasn't a very good drawing. And then move it to another area, okay? And you can see what it's doing is it's going to use content aware fill, okay? So you saw that pop up to try and fill that in. All right, so see how good a job that did. So now I'm just going to do it section by section here. Let's pull it up over this area. So it looks like it's going to be too dark, but when it finishes, you see that it's blended it in fairly nicely, right? So I'm just going to do it section by section here. It looks like it's getting a bit lighter, so I want to make sure it matches, right? I think I did the best job when I used the healing tool, to be honest, right? But I wanted to show you all of the different ways that you could fill in this yellow line, okay? Now, oops, when we get to his face, I definitely want to zoom in farther, okay? And generally, when I'm doing this, you want to kind of zoom into 100% anyways, okay? I'll do one more patch. Let's do one more up here. Maybe even one more. Okay, so draw. I don't want to get into his face, okay? So the next thing I want to do is just make a selection. And for that, I'm going to use the lasso, okay? That's the tool up here. If you don't see it, you might have it in the pull down menu. So the lasso, and I'm going to select this whole area, including his face, okay? Like so. And then I'm going to go up here under edit and choose content aware fill. Okay, now I could do that with the entire yellow line as well. Okay, so again, this is another method. So we can use the healing tool, the stamp tool, the patch tool, or we can make a selection and use content aware fill. Okay, now I've got my computer set to use 2 monitors here, so I need to get this so you can see it. All right, there we go. Let me just make this smaller. So what it's showing me here, come on, work with me, Photoshop. All right, there we go. So what it's showing me here is the area that I've selected, and you see how it's filled it in? It's doing an okay job. And there's a few settings in the middle here that you can try and see if it does any better. So I can try the color adaptation. And honestly, I literally just play around with these. Okay, now he's got sort of a funny eyebrow or brow, which is not good. Okay, so that one's not working so great. I'll leave that on default. Let's try rotation adaptation. No, that's not going to work so good either. I think so far the best one, let's just see a preview here. Where's my turning on and off? Let's see. We could try mirror. No. We could try scale. I think the best, oh, that's not bad. I think the best one was honestly what it was at the beginning. Okay, so we're just going to go back to sort of the default settings. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to apply it. And then you can decide down here where it says output to output it to the same layer, a duplicate layer, or the current layer. So I'm actually going to do it to a duplicate layer and say okay. Okay, so now I'm just going to pull my layers panel over here so you can see it. Okay, so now I've got this original one and a duplicate. Okay, so you can see this is now all on a new layer. Okay, and you can see what it's done. But I did that on a new layer because what I want to do is just go in here and mask this one, okay? So I don't want this to apply to his face. So I'm going to paint with a black brush, and this is one that gets confusing. Okay, so if I paint with black at 100%, the mask is white right now, which means that everything on the top layer is visible. But if I paint with black, here, I'll just make it bigger, the bottom layer will show through, okay? So I want to do that on his face, right? I want to get his face showing. And then I'm going to switch to white. So I just switch the colors. And then I'm just going to go in here with a smaller brush and just make sure I go up. See, it's not working as great as I was hoping to. So I'm still getting that extra brow here. So that content aware fill didn't work as well as I'd hoped, okay? So sometimes it's a trial and error. So I'm going to ditch that one completely and we're back to this guy again. So I'm going to go patch tool one more time. Okay. Photoshop honestly is a lot of trial and error. So you really have to try a couple of different things and see what works best, right? I am going to go back to the stamp tool, make my brush a little smaller. Now what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to source from below and paint up like this. And then I'm going to source from above because then I'm going to avoid getting those duplicates. Okay, so see how I'm just painting in really slowly here, okay? And I want to make sure that I get a harder edge brush, okay? So I got that dialog box to pop up by right-clicking. Okay, so hard edge brush means that I'm going to have an edge that's more defined, okay? So in this case, I want that because I'm getting closer to his nose, okay? So I'm just going to get in here. All right, so now see that looks really obvious. That's where the opacity comes down. I'm going to dial it down and paint a little bit at a time. Okay, so I'm just going to go with 50%, come in here, and then I'm going to go with 50%, come in here again. Sometimes Photoshop is a painstaking process, okay, and you can see that it's still not perfect, and if I back out a little bit, you can start to see that I've got some repeating patterns, okay. So I might go back in with the clone tool or the healing tool and just see if I can do a better job of picking up a bit more pattern, right? That looks better. Let's see how that goes. That looks pretty good, okay? But you can still see that there's sort of a strip here, and I want to get rid of that, okay? There we go. So always make sure you look at your work zoomed in and then you look at it zoomed out, okay? Because I can still see that there is a strip. There's other strips up here on the road, so it's not so bad. It blends in a little bit, right? But we can try and keep playing with it. So this is something that I would probably spend quite a bit of time to remove and to get it to look natural, right? Something like that. Once I'm happy with that, I'm just going to hit save, right? And I use Command or Control S, or you can go up here and click save under the file menu. And then once it's saved, Photoshop will tell you, it's saving. Let's see, right? See it down the bottom here, it says 26%. Once it is done saving, then you can close the file. It's done. And come back to Lightroom. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the two different shots now in Lightroom. So we've got the original that has the road, and now we've cloned it out in Photoshop. Okay, so that's the tool that I would use to get rid of that guy. I lost my mouse again. There we go. Okay. So let's take a look at the before. I'll just reset that one. Side by side. Right? Any questions about that one? All right, Anne, I want to see you attack this one and see if you can get rid of that yellow line coming out of his nose and see how well you do. Okay, let's move on to the next one. All right, Nigel's here, so we're going to do one of Nigel's. She says hers ended up as black and white. Yeah, I could see that as well, and that would help get rid of the yellow line. I could definitely see that working well as a black and white for sure. We can just hit black and white in there. Remember, if you're doing your black and white conversion, to make sure that you do it so that you've got this color panel mixed here, okay? Because I can adjust the original tones. So look at how I can actually get rid of the stripes on his shirt if I wanted to, or minimize them. Orange, you'll find that orange is a lot in the skin tones, okay? Yes, definitely black and white works to get rid of a lot of those distractions. Perfect. Okay, or I can darken or lighten the red. Yellow would have worked well on that line to darken it. We can also darken the grass, and it's picking up some highlights over here as well. And one thing I like to do with black and white is actually make sure that I have a lot of contrast. So you can use the contrast slider, or you can use the tone curve. If you could share the video, please, Rob, that I did on curves, that would be great. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little S curve here, and that boosts the contrast. Okay, now look what's happened. Now that I've done that, you can see that my painting in here wasn't quite so perfect, but it's not bad, right? There's a little bit of a halo. Definitely black and white, I agree. All right, let's go to Nigel's. All right, so this is one that Nigel took. Maybe you could tell us where you photographed this, Nigel. I'm guessing in the Caribbean somewhere. All right, so let's take a look. Okay, so this is a CR2 file. So in Lightroom, that's why I ask for raw files, because I have all the data on the information of your image. Okay, so I can see what lens you used. I can see the camera, so a Canon Rebel T7i, what lens, and the exposure. Okay. So let's get into the develop module, and the same thing here. Okay, so it's got the camera standard profile. I can choose a different profile. Now notice if I choose landscape, like the image looks sort of hazy and almost like foggy or smoggy. And look what happens when I choose landscape. It cleans up the sky real nice. Okay, so I'm gonna go with that one. And then I'm gonna do the shift, double click on the whites and the blacks again. Okay, so just a camera profile change and 2 quick clicks, and we've punched up the color and the contrast of this image. Okay, I'm not even going to begin to pronounce that. Oistins, Barbados, Nigel? I figured it was Barbados somewhere. Next, I'm going to make sure that the image is straight. It looks pretty straight, but let's just double check. So going into the crop tool, I can click auto. Okay, so what it's looking for is it's trying to straighten the horizon. Okay, and it adjusted it a little bit. So I'm going to undo that and see if it got it right. So this little ruler here where it says angle, if you click on it, it gives you this ruler and these crosshairs. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to go at the far edge of the horizon, and then I'm going to stretch it all the way over here. But what I'm trying to do is line it up with the edge of the water, right there. Okay, so when I click it, that's straight. Okay. So it looks like the auto didn't do as good of a job. Okay, while I'm in here, I'm also going to crop out a whole bunch of sky. Okay, so what you want to think about when you're creating your compositions, where is your horizon? And right now it's dead center. And there's a whole lot of sky that doesn't have anything in it or anything interesting to hold the viewer. So we're just going to get rid of it. Right? Because for me, the interesting part is all this stuff down here, the water, and this little island, right? Like so. Might take a little bit off the bottom as well, because this one on the corner kind of grabs my attention, so I'm going to get rid of that dark corner, right? So now we've got a brighter color. We can increase the blue a bit more if we want by adjusting the color balance, the white balance, right? But that's fairly well adjusted. Okay, the one thing you want to be careful of with this is where you have focused. Okay, so I took a look at the image and I was looking for sharpness, and I think the sharpest part is this little island here in the middle. Okay, so if you look at the water, if you can't tell where your focus is, okay, this island back here partly looks out of focus, but it could be that it's sort of that atmospheric haze. Okay. But as I come closer to the foreground, you'll notice that these parts are out of focus. Okay, so this is not sharp, and then it starts to fall off somewhere in the middle here. Okay, so focus looks like, let me just get my green pointer again. So focus looks like it's going from about this point in the water to somewhere between these two islands, okay, these pieces of land. And the problem with that is that you've got this big chunk in the foreground here on the left that's not in focus. Okay, so you really want to make sure and be clear on where you're focusing. Okay, so you've used F8 in this case. And my question would be to you, Nigel, what is your subject? Okay, so what did you want people to focus on here, right? Was it this tree, right? Was it the island, or was it this back island, or was it just the whole scene? Okay, so you really want to think about what you want in focus. The dead parts of this tree at the bottom are not so attractive either, right? But the part that's out of focus, because it's taking up almost a third of the image and it's in the foreground, it's a little bit distracting, right? So you can use framing effectively to get people to look into the center of the image, right? But there has to be something there for people to grab their attention, right? So for example, if there was a whale jumping out of the water, a sailboat, a kayaker, or something like that here to grab their attention, then it would stay there, okay? We can add an edge vignette on this one as well. And that's in the effects panel down here. So I've showed this trick before, but I'm going to bring it all the way down to dark, feather it. I'm going to make sure that I'm using either highlight or color priority. Okay. And then I can make it smaller, make it more round. Looks pretty good the way that is there. And then I put the feather back up and adjust the darkness. Okay. So you never want to do something that looks like that for your vignette. You want to make sure that the feather is 50 or above so that it's very softly gradated out to the edges, right? And you don't want to do that either, okay? So the idea with a vignette is that you don't want it to be visible, okay? So this is highlight. I'm going to try color priority. I think I like that better. I can take it a little farther, okay? And you'll notice that I've pulled the highlights up on here. And what that does is if you've got things that are bright on the corners, it keeps them from being affected by the vignette, okay? So it looks a bit more natural. So before and after. Great. And what's to know, where does one put the focus point for this type of photo mid-layer? It really depends on your intention. And like I said, if there is a sailboat or a kayaker or a surfer or something in the middle here, I would definitely focus on them. But I find that this image is lacking a focal point a little bit because there isn't one thing that draws the viewer's eye into it other than this land here, okay? If there was a bunch of sea lions on here, I would go there. It needs something, okay? So if it's just the overall scene, like as in a landscape, and there isn't a particular item that's the subject, but more of a feeling, okay, then you might want to have more depth of field and get everything in focus, okay? So landscape photographers tend to shoot more, f11, f16 and get more depth of field, but you probably want to focus a bit more forward, okay? Meaning towards the camera, because 1/3 of your depth of field is between where you focus and the camera, and 2/3 is on the other side, okay? So if I had focused, say, on this wave here, I probably would have got this rock in focus and the island and possibly even the other one in the background if I'd used f16, for example, okay? Then you want to be careful of your shutter speed. If you want the fast shutter speed to freeze the waves, you're probably going to need a higher ISO or a tripod, okay? So most landscape photographers use a tripod for that reason because they usually end up with slow shutter speeds. Okay? Great question. Yes, it's another 1/3. So 1/3, the rule of thirds also applies with focusing. However, if you're dealing with macro photography, then as soon as you start to get in really close, because I know you like to do little abstracts and things, and as soon as you start to get in really close, Then your focus goes to 50% behind the subject where you focused and 50% in front. So then you want to focus in the middle, okay? All right. Move on to the next one here. I'd love to know where this was shot, because this is a Mike Oshima image, and I've been trying to guess, but I'm guessing Italy because tutta la plaza. Okay, so everywhere in the plaza you will be towed. Okay, so I understand enough Spanish to be able to translate some Italian, and I do believe that everywhere in the plaza you will be towed. So don't park there. Okay, so this is clearly Italy. Sort of recognizes it based on the architecture and so on as well. But I want to work on this image and see how I can pull this out. So I think what he's working on capturing here is this interaction between these ladies, right? Then they're having this little chat. There's a lot of stuff going on, right? And the first thing I want to do is crop it. Okay, so I'm going to go free form again. I want to get rid of the stuff on the right because it's not adding to the story. I want to get rid of this stuff. See, I'm debating getting rid of the stuff at the top because the sky is super white, but leaving that sign there tells me this is Italy, okay? I might instead get rid of some of this foreground, okay? Yes, it's a leading line, okay? However, when you have all of this foreground, it feels like the ladies are really far away. Let me just do a comparison for you, okay? So I'm just going to make a virtual copy, right? So I just hit Command or Control apostrophe, and now you can see that I've got two versions of this image. So all it does in Lightroom is it makes a copy, and I'm going to crop this one differently. So I'm going to leave the top on this one and crop out the bottom, okay? Now let's look at these side by side, right? So tell me, those of you that are watching, which one feels like the ladies are closer to you, okay? Can you see and feel that all of this foreground feels like there's a lot of distance to them, okay? Versus here, we're closer to this lady. Do you guys feel that? Tell me in the chat if you can see the difference between how that makes that image feel, okay? Because my first instinct was to crop it the way that I have on the left here and leave those leading lines, okay? So if you want it to feel, again, this goes back to your intention, okay? So if you want it to feel like they're far away and you're sort of observing their conversation from afar, go with the left crop. If you want to feel like the viewer's more part of the conversation, go with the right crop, okay? So Anne says closer on the right, Rita prefers the right, okay? I do as well, okay? So I think that for me, there's some storytelling with the sign here because it tells me that it's Italy, right? And I want to make sure that I see the ladies, they're the story. Okay, now notice how I've cropped it. There's a little bit of white here at the bottom. So I'm just gonna, oops. Apparently I got rid of the clone, the virtual copy. So I'm just gonna get rid of this little bit of white at the bottom here. And maybe not so tight on this. Okay. While I'm in the crop tool, I'm also gonna hit auto, which tells me, or it tries to correct that tilt again. So it looks like it did correct sort of the lean a little bit. So let's go with that. Still got a little bit of that white at the bottom. Okay. You see what I'm seeing? I just don't want this little white stripe here. Okay, so I want to crop until I'm into the dark. Okay, because that white strip at the bottom is going to take my eye away from them. Okay. A little bit of white at the bottom. Yeah, nothing gets past my eyes, Rob says. And that's, I want to say eagle eyes, or, you know, because an eagle can spot a mouse flying in a field when they're, you know, way up in the sky, right? And that's, it's about developing your eye to see those things, okay? All right, so now that we've done that, we can go in and do all the other stuff, okay? So we can look for camera profiles. Now, because this is a JPEG, it's possible that he's exported it, and I don't know what camera it was taken on. Let's see if I can find out in the metadata. Oh, it was taken with a Coolpix. Okay, so it's a Nikon Coolpix, right? So this is like a little point-and-shoot camera. Okay, so it probably doesn't have color profiles. So in this case, we could just see what we've got in terms of artistic. Okay, so these are ones that come with Lightroom. Let me just close the histogram so we can see them. Okay, so if we want to get sort of funky with this image, actually that one's kind of spruces up the colors a bit. I see this as very sort of antique looking. Aha! Look at, we're getting closer now, right? We might even want to go black and white on this one. There's a vintage set of color profiles. So these are all in Lightroom. So you notice that I haven't done anything with sliders, right? This is all stuff that's built into these color profiles, okay? So that one's kind of faded. I like this one here. Okay, so it kind of gives me this old world feeling, like it's faded. I'm gonna check the tilt here because I think Lightroom has not done quite a good job at setting that. I'm gonna go down here instead. Okay, so transform, you can also go level here or vertical. Okay, so vertical corrects those distortions. And I don't like what that's doing. Okay. Always experiment. So everything I do is about experimenting. And let's just see what it does. Okay, so where I'm looking to line up the vertical is this line here in the middle. Okay, so when you have multiple lines, and it looks like there's a hill here also. Okay, make sure that you line up the lines that are in the center of the image. Okay, those are the ones that are going to be straight. So before we've even adjusted any sliders, you know, we've got something interesting. I'm going to check my highlights. They're good. I'm going to add a little bit of black. And if we pull the highlights down, okay, you'll see that what happens is, yes, the sky darkens, okay, but there's nothing there to get. Okay, so even if we go super dark, we're just going to end up with this yellowish sky, right? So I'm not going to pull the highlights down, maybe a tiny bit, because see what it's happening to her hair? I'm getting a little bit of separation and detail between this lady's white hair and the building, okay? And let's go, it's a dance, okay? So if I increase whites, I'm going to decrease the highlights. Okay? So now we've got a bit more contrast and a color tone which is a bit more sort of almost antique-y, and I haven't even played with any of these color balances or anything, right? You add a vignette on this one. This is one of my presets. Okay. The thing with Lightroom vignettes is that they are always from the edge in, right? So if I want to darken the stuff on the left because the ladies are off-centered, we're going to use the radial filter, okay? So radial filter, I'm just going to double click to reset. I'm going to set my exposure to minus and then just draw a circle around the ladies, okay? Now keep in mind, I'm just doing this for positioning and then invert, okay? So now it's darkening outside the circle. It's got a strong feather, so it's actually coming quite far into the circle. Okay, so we can lower the feather a little bit, but be careful you go too far, you get that edge, okay? Or I can make the circle bigger, okay? But I definitely want to darken not so much, okay? That looks pretty good. Okay, another option we can use is the graduated filter, which is this guy. And that one gives you crosshairs as well, but now you're dragging in from the edge. Okay, so this one again only affects from the edge in, and I want to bring this wall a little bit darker. Maybe a little too dark. Again, with the purpose of bringing the attention in to the ladies, okay? Now if I want to do one more radial filter, or that dodge face, okay, so dodge means lighten, okay? So I can dodge these ladies' faces or lighten them, okay? Because they're the ones I really want to see, okay? They are the stars of the show, because something that this lady in blue is saying is obviously quite funny because they've got this funny expression, right? So now look what we got. We're bringing the attention in. I might even brighten her a little bit more. Okay, so you can see that there's two radial filters on here, right? This one is affecting the outside area, and this one is affecting inside these ladies here. So I'm going to, oops, I got the wrong one. There we go, dodge face. I was going to lighten them a little bit more. There we go. So before, I'm using the backslash key, and after. Right, now if I wanted to take this another step farther and get rid of that white sky, I could pull this into Luminar and actually change the sky out. Okay, let's have a look at that. So I'm going to right click, edit in Luminar AI. Okay, I want to make sure that I'm editing a copy with Lightroom adjustments. Okay. And usually I will edit a TIFF because that has 16 bits or more color. But for the purpose of speed and editing today, I'm going to go JPEG, just because it will open and process quicker for demonstration purposes. Okay, while that's doing that, let me just pop over here and see how we're doing while Luminar is opening. Okay. Any other questions? As a quick reminder, if you're watching the replay or if you're new to watching this, my editing live, we do this every week. We are changing the date. It's going to be Wednesday evenings now on North America time. It'll be morning in Australia, New Zealand, I believe Asia as well. So we should be able to pick up a bunch of different time zones. And I'm changing it up so that summer hours, people are out and about on the weekends, okay? If you want to submit your images, we need more images. So please use the form in the description below the video to send in some more images. I'm almost out. I had a whole bunch and now I'm almost out. I'm taking it easy today and going slow and going in depth on the ones that I am doing because we're almost out. So please send some more images. All right, so Luminar is opened. Let me just get back over here. Okay, so I'm not going to use a template because I know what I want to do. My whole purpose here is to change the sky. So I'm going to head right to the Sky AI in the editing tools. Okay, and I'm going to pick the sky. Rob, if you could please include a link to our sky pack. Now, when you're choosing a sky, keep in mind that it has to fit with the image, okay? So if I choose one that has a sunset and sharp a bright sun and the actual sun in the image, it's not going to match this one. Okay, so when you look at this image, it's got no sharp sunlight, there's no bright shadows and harsh shadows, contrasty meaning bright sun, it's got softness, so it's an overcast sky. So you want something that's going to match or be similar. Okay, so I'm going to go down here into the cloudy skies first and see if those are going to match. Okay, so I don't want a blue sky. Ooh, that looks pretty ominous. Really pink. Let me see. I'm going to have a look under mats as well. I think that's not all my skies for some reason. All right, let's look under. Okay, Matsus also has a wonderful sky pack of like 400 skies. So I'm going to try one of his. You can put a link for that. That's not bad. Okay, so it's overcast. We want something that looks realistic with the scene. Okay, looks like the rain is coming on that one. Okay, let's try that. Okay, because that's kind of interesting. So that one looks like it's actually going to rain, right? Once you get the sky in place, you have various adjustments you can do. And the first thing I want to do is make the sky warmer, okay? Because the overall image is yellow and it doesn't match, okay? So I'm going to warm up the sky. That matches a little better. And we can darken the sky or lighten it, okay? In this case, I'm going to lighten it a little bit. Okay, there's no reflection here because there's nothing in the water, so we just don't need that. Scenery lighting is wonderful because then what it's going to do is it's going to relight the rest of the image to match the sky. Right? So see how that's working. Right? Relight human. Right? So the sky is really dark. Now notice it's darkening the people. Right? So it's giving us that really sort of gloomy, okay, it's about to rain day. I might play with the mask enhancement or the refinement a little bit here. I find that it's going over on this building just a little bit. It looks pretty good, right? So it's just kind of taking that sky that's blown out and adding a little bit of interest. Okay. Now that I've done that, I can actually go to the portrait tools, and this is one that I love, especially for group photos and things like this. And I'm going to pull up the face light. Okay, so see how it's picking up those two ladies' faces as I go higher? Okay, so it's just giving me that same thing that I did in Lightroom, but with a quick and easy slider. So this is, again, another reason why I love Luminar, is because it gives me these tools that I can do really, really quickly. Okay. I might even go in here and do an enhance, okay, which sort of punches up the contrast a little bit. And the sky enhancer under the Enhance AI is going to enhance the new sky as well, okay? So if I tried that on the original sky, it probably is not going to do anything because it's just white, all right? So let's take a look at before and after. So once again, we're using that sky replacement, okay, to really dial in something a bit more interesting than the original that we had here. Okay. I think I'm happy with that. I am going to punch in the contrast a bit more as well. And under the light panel, there's one called Smart Contrast in Luminar. And it does a really great job of adding contrast into the mid-tone areas, as you can see here. Okay. Like so. Now we've done a color adjustment in Lightroom using the profile. If you want to further that, you can use the Mood tool and choose what's called a LUT or a lookup table. Okay, and these are built into Luminar, and you can also get additional ones. So I might look for one that kind of further enhances that look that we started. Okay, Anaheim, that's not bad. Okay. I'm going to go down in here to the cross-processed ones because I know there's some funky colors. And as I drag my mouse over, you can see it changing. Right? So far, I like that first one. Oh, 1960s is kind of cool. That gives it like a matte look. But I'm going to go with this Anaheim because it kind of goes with the color we're going with. And you can dial it up or down. Right? So I'm just further enhancing that color that we had coming from Lightroom. When I'm done, okay, then I'm going to click apply. So this is the process of taking your image from Lightroom over to Luminar and back again. So once I click apply, just like I did when I took the image to Photoshop and I hit save, okay, it's going to save this new image, okay, so it made a copy, and bring it back to Lightroom. Okay, so now you can see we're back in Lightroom. So there's the original from the Lightroom edit where we didn't have the sky, and now we've got the sky replaced. Okay, so I'm going to do one more comparison here. I like to see before and after, so let's look at all of those. Okay, let me change the order of them. Okay, so we went from that to that to that. All right. So what do you think? Which one do you prefer? Tell me in the chat which one you prefer, left, middle, or right. All right. Oh, I can see there's a question, but while you're telling me which of these you like, so as Rob says, we will take any and all photo submissions. We haven't had many animal photos, night shots, that kind of thing. I'd love to have some starry nights or a Milky Way shot because I can bring those out. Lots of landscapes and nature we get. Those are always welcome. People photography. Sky Pack, Ad says, can I add it to Photoshop? Yes, you can. Photoshop does have a sky replacement tool as well. And when you go into Photoshop, there is a thing where it says choose the sky or choose a custom, and you can just add it in there as well. So Photoshop does have a sky replacement tool. However, I've tried both of them. I've tried Luminar and I've tried Photoshop. And I actually, in most cases, preferred Luminar's version of the sky replacement. I felt that it did a better job, easier. Photoshop gives you more flexibility because the sky and the blending becomes layers, but that also could be confusing if you're not used to working with layers, okay? If you haven't updated your Photoshop, then you probably don't have that sky tool, so you'd have to do it manually and mask it in, which would be honestly a real pain in the butt. but. So Luminar, you saw me do it, works much easier with the AI. So the artificial intelligence finds the sky and does the replacement for you. Rob, if you could share the last video I did on full sky replacements with reflections when the reflections came out, that would be great, because Photoshop's version doesn't handle reflections yet. So it feels like, or it seems like, Photoshop is actually catching up to Luminar in the realm of AI. Okay, so they're a little bit ahead on that game. Oh, and you guys can't see the images. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so which image do you prefer? Because I'm talking and you can't see the images. Silly me. Okay, how about that? Okay, so which one do you prefer? Left, middle, or right? Okay, so Anne says right one, Nigel says right, Rita says right. Okay, so sky replacement for the win. All right. Can I please show how to put these three images up on the screen at the same time? Good question. Okay, so I'm in Lightroom, and what I did was I am in the, oops, let me get out of this mode here. I am in the library module. Okay, so what I did was I selected the three images. So I picked this one, and then I held Shift and clicked on the third one to select them all. Okay, or you can select different images by holding Command Control. Okay, so that they're not sequential. Okay, because if I click that one, Shift that one, I get them all. Okay, so select the ones that you want. Okay, and then just hit N. Okay, so N stands for I don't even know what it stands for, to be honest. Survey mode. Okay, so it stands for survey mode. And then I just hit tab to get rid of the sidebars. Okay, so N shows any of the images that you currently have selected. Okay, does that help? And then I hit L, which is called lights out. Okay, so lights out, oh, I don't know why my Lightroom does that. Lights out makes everything behind whatever you've got visible or selected black. Okay. So back to showing the program or dimming the program itself. Okay. All right. Let's get back to grid mode here. So now you can see what lights out does. There you go. All right. Okay, so we've done those. We've done that one. We've done that one. Make sure you guys can see the screen. Yes. Okay. Let's work on, we did that one, just marking these for my own purposes. Oh, we've got one of Rita's, so let's do that. Perfect, and it's a person image. So we haven't done a person image yet today. All right, so we've got a CR2 file, so a Canon again, lots of Canon shooters, wow. Okay, so we got an SL1, a 50mm lens, love the 50mm lens, okay? And you shot it at ISO 200, f5 at 100th of a second, right? So those are good. Those are the good settings. Those are good exposures. Let's see what mode you shot it in here. Okay, manual. So one question I would ask you, Rita, is why you want to shoot manual. Manual is absolutely perfect. If you're using a tripod and you have full control and time to do your settings, absolutely manual is great. Okay, so if that's the case here, that's a good choice. The only thing I would have suggested is opening the aperture a little bit more, because you would have gotten that background a bit more out of focus. Okay, so you've got a 1.8 lens. Don't be afraid to use it. I find that often people that have big apertures like that are afraid to open the lens wide for fear of missing the focus. You do really have to be careful of where you focus, and you've done a great job here. She is absolutely sharp. Okay. So I would have probably dialed this down to about f2 or even 2.8 and get that background a bit more out of focus, right? But we can work with this. All right, so again, okay, so it's camera neutral is the profile that's been applied. Let's see what some of the other ones do. So portrait gives us a bit more red. You can see that. Landscape is a bit more color. Neutral's a bit drab. Okay, standard gives you a little bit more punch. Portrait, I find with Canon and their portrait one, I find the shadows are often really red. Like when I zoom in here, You see that her face kind of looks a lot red. So we can work with that and just dial out some of the red. Or honestly, I actually don't mind landscape even in this one. Okay. But it does bring out the greens more in that background, which is not what we want. So I'm going to stick with portrait. Okay. And we're going to do a couple of things. Now, before I do this white, if I adjust that to dial down the highlights, okay, it's going to affect everything. It's going to affect her as well. So remember, global edits, okay? I don't want to bring the highlights down on her. I just want to do that on the background. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do actually is draw a graduated filter. And I'm going to go from the top down. And I'm going to pull it right down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the exposure down, the highlights way down. Okay, I might even bring the contrast down and get rid of some texture, lower the clarity, and lower the sharpness. Okay, so basically we're sort of faking that blurring background, but you see that it's affecting her as well. Okay, I might even go lower on the contrast. Dehaze is another one that works really well, because if I lower dehaze, it sort of makes everything mush, right? I don't want the color and the punch in the background. I want a little bit softer, right? So let's just do that. Okay, let's see what happens if we do that. And darker. Okay, so now we got the background looking good, but she's still affected. So if I scroll down a little bit more, you'll see this range mask tool here that's part of the graduated filter. And I'm going to choose luminance. Okay, so luminance is brightness. So before, when I used the radial filter, I masked it by painting in with the brush. Okay, this one I could use the brush and remove it all from her, but I would be doing it manually. Okay, this one allows me to do a mask automatically. So I'm going to show you how that's done. Okay, so I'm just clicking this little box. So now I can see everything that's red is where this filter, this graduated filter, is applying. Okay, so this slider here, these sliders under range match the histogram. So the left is black, the white is right. Okay, so I want it to apply to the highlight areas, but not to the dark areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this slider up. So you see what's happening is it's starting to not apply to her. Okay. Now I have to be careful how far I go, because if I take it real far, it's actually going to stop applying to the background. So I'm going to go about there. Right. So see, it's still applying on her a little bit. Let's go a little more. That looks pretty good. And now from there, I can use the brush and just erase. Okay. So I'm going to use erase. Make sure I have my flow turned up, and I'll paint at a fairly high opacity. And I'm just going to make sure that I get it off of her. Okay. Like so. And there's a little bit in her scarf here. You'll see how it's pulling down the highlights in the scarf. Okay. Like so. Okay. So now it's picked up and darkened the background without darkening her. Okay. So see how that works? So it's still getting her a little bit, it looks like. Okay, now I'm going to do the whites. Okay, so I'm going to bring the slider up and this one down. I'm going to brighten the whole image because she looks just a tad dark. Okay, and I'm going to do that brighten face. Are you using Luminar? Or I think, Rita, you're using Luminar, are you not? Please tell me and I will hop over there, because I can do the same or similar things with this image in Luminar as well. And in fact, that face lightening would do a great job here. Okay, so I could use that radial filter in Lightroom to lighten her face, but I'm going to hop over to Luminar and use the portrait tools. Okay. All right, here we go. It's coming. Yes, that's what I thought you used Luminar. Okay, so you could see what I did with that that darkening filter, and I'll show you how to do that same thing in Luminar in a moment here. All right, so it's coming. Here we go. All right. Okay, so once again, I'm not going to use a template because I know that I want to use the portrait tool, so I'm just going to go right there. So face light is definitely one I want to use, okay? You want to make sure you don't go too far that it looks fake, okay? But I definitely want to lift the light on her face, okay? Yeah, I still think I've gotten some of that on her because she looks a little bit blurry, but we can fix that. Okay. We don't need to slim her because she's lovely. Right? Now she's got really nice blue eyes, so let's see if we can enhance her eyes. And I showed this trick on another video. Rob, if you could show the eye enhancement video. If you change the color of the iris, you'll often pick up more. Okay, so now that's really blue. Let's try gray. That works. I find that gray actually works well for replacing blue eyes without adding that really sort of over the top blue color. But look at how nice that does. Okay, I'm going to whiten her eyes a little bit. Red circles. She hasn't really got circles in her eyes. Eyebrows. We can darken her eyebrows a little bit. And iris flare. We can give her a little bit of flare. That's lightening the bottom of the eye. Actually, I prefer it without. Let's go like so. Okay. And I often do red eye removal because I find that it removes some of the, gives you a bit more iris color. Okay. Mouth, we're definitely going to whiten her teeth. Okay, let's see if we go real far. Okay, see what that's doing to her teeth. I don't want to make it unrealistic, so let's go about there. And we could darken her lips a little bit if we want to give her a little bit more lipstick. Okay, so there's our before and after. And I also want to give her a little bit of skin softening under the Skin AI. So be careful with you know, people of a certain age, because you don't want to remove, okay, so see how it just removed her mole, okay, and also removed part of her ear, okay, so we want to be careful of that, okay. There's definitely something weird happening there, okay, so it's adjusting her, all of her hair as well. Her hair looks a little bit purple now that we're zoomed in here. So you want to be careful of going too far, okay. And I don't see that she has any shine removal, okay. If you wanted to deal with the mole, like she's got some issues here, she's got a little black spot on her lip, you could use the erase tool for handling those things, right? And I think that's about as far as I would go. So I'm just softening her, and I'm not changing how she looks, okay? So let's just see a before and after. We're punching that up real nice, okay? I'm going to use this Enhance AI tool because it does a really good job of sort of overall. Okay, so notice it's affecting everything, including the background, which we don't want to punch up. Okay, so it's doing a really good job on her. So I would use that and then just mask out or erase it, in this case, from the background. Okay, so I want to make sure I have a big brush. Okay, so remember where red is, exactly the same as I saw in Lightroom. Okay, so where the red is where it's applying, and I've now removed it from the background. Okay, so I'm not punching up the contrast in the background. Okay, and we're getting closer. I'm going to give her a little bit more contrast using that smart contrast. And we can do a vignette. Okay, so the Lightroom vignette goes from the edges in and it's always centered. The Luminar vignette allows you to choose the subject or place it. Okay, so my trick of darkening, make it a little smaller, maybe a little rounder, and then I get to place it. So I can place it off center like so. So that's going to darken her hands a bit, which is fine because I want the focus to be on her face. So once I get it where I want it, And I dial it back up to something a bit more soft. Okay. Yeah. Like so. Her color is a little off to me, so I'm going to go to the color tool, and there's a slider called remove color cast, and I'm just going to see what it does. Right? So she's kind of got that weird, remember I said the Adobe profile adds a little bit of pink or red to the shadows, and I think that's what I'm seeing here on her face, right? So I'm going to see what this remove color cast does, right? Let's take it to about 30 or so. She's starting to look too green by 30, but I think at about 15, it's helping to sort of get rid of that pink tone in her skin. Do you see that? So off, on. Okay, it's very subtle, but it's helping to get rid of that red that we talked about. Okay. I might actually turn this one into a black and white because again, all this stuff in the background is very distracting. We can also work with the HSL panel, so back to the color tool, to darken some of those things in the background, right? So I have to kind of guess what color is there. So we're looking at green, obviously. So if I click on green, you can see that it's adjusting the luminance or brightness, okay? So we can darken the greens. We can also lower the saturation of the greens, okay? So it's not taking our attention. And it looks like there's some orange there as well, but I don't want to lower orange because watch what happens. Okay. Okay. It affects skin tone. Okay. Now I could do this and then mask it, but then it would also mask the remove color cast that I did here. Okay. So it's kind of, I have to decide if I want to do that and then change the color of her face another way, because I could darken the oranges here and lower the saturation of the oranges here. Maybe even yellow. So I'm basically making the background sort of monochromatic and less colorful and less bright, so it doesn't take attention away. And then again, just mask it onto her, right? Now keep in mind that I did that already on Enhance and painted in the background mask, so I can just go back to Enhance, copy the mask from this little 3 dots, okay? Go back to color, create a mask, and then paste it. Okay, so now it's just going to apply to the background, okay? But I want it opposite, right? So invert it. Okay, so now we see that it's affecting the background, right? If I turn the mask on, you can see where it's affecting. And I might need to paint in a little bit next to her head here because I missed a spot right there. All right. So before, after. So we've punched her up and we've minimized that background again, right? Now we can do the same thing with structure, okay? So I can blur it and boost it even more, okay? But we don't want to blur her, so we're going to paste that mask in again, okay? And invert it. Okay, so once again, you can see it's affecting the background, right? If I turn it off and on. Okay, so now we've toned down the background with color and with sharpness. So she's really standing out. I love her pink suit and her pink scarf, so I don't think I want to make this black and white, but maybe we want to give her a little bit more punch. I think I want to make her mystical, which is great on all people portraits. I just love that one. And what else? We could also try and get rid of those highlights with the super contrast tool. Okay, so see how that's affecting the background. Darker. Okay, so it's affecting the highlights there. And again, do that mask. Okay, so we just want to paste the mask in. So it's only applying on the background. Okay. So copy and pasting the mask in Luminar is really useful because you can use it, you can paint it once and then use it again and again and again, or even flip it and inverse it to apply it opposite. Okay. think we're going to use a mood here. So let's see if there's any LUTs. So now I'm really just playing around. There's some portrait toning LUTs. Let's see if any of these look good on her. Hey, Maria looks pretty good. Not crazy about that. Let's see Kodachrome. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Red, smoky. That's interesting. Let's try that one. So this is giving her kind of an antique look, which is kind of neat. Actually, kind of like that. So we still got her pink, right? Now remember, we could actually put a mask on this one if we want. The same mask. Okay, so now it's just on the background. Or get rid of it. I do like that effect. What do you guys think of that effect on her? Let's see. Okay. Rita says she'll love it. Awesome. Luminar makes portrait editing really easy. Yes, it does. Can you dodge and burn the background? Yes, I can. What camera mode would I suggest for portraits? If you could share the article, Rob, please, on... let me just get over here. Where am I? There I am. If you could please share the article on manual mode and shooting modes, and also camera portrait settings. I think you probably have that one, Rita, but if you could share those for people watching the video later, those two articles. So manual mode, shooting in manual mode, is it for everybody? And the 10 camera portrait settings that comes with a free downloadable cheat sheet, right? Let's see. Awesome. Send me an email, Rita. If she wants to have a copy of the edits that I've done here, I'd be happy to send you an exported version. All right. Let's get back here and finish it up. She looks like a lovely lady with so much character. You know, she's got this beautiful ring, which is also pink, right? She's a very, very purple lady. Everything is purple, right? So I've really kind of toned the image to bring out those colors and the purple, right? For her, as opposed to letting all the other colors shine, right? I love that. Yeah, I like it. Like it a lot. Right. Another one I use is Glow. All right. If we want to do more soft focus, we can do that. The one I often use is Orton Effect. And then it adds brightness, so I just tone that down. The soft focus one actually looks pretty good. Don't want so much contrast though. I find they do add a lot of brightness and contrast, so you have to sort of play with these when you're applying them, right? That gives her a bit of a glow. And again, we can apply that just to her or to the background. And in this case, I just want it on her, okay, not on the background. Okay? We could actually do the same on this one, because I don't want the background to sort of look punched up with the contrast. There we go. All right. Are we happy with that? I might go back here now and darken this vignette a little bit more, okay, because her hands are now kind of dark. And Anne asked about dodging and burning. So yes, we can use the dodge and burn tool. And if we want to darken the background, okay, so select darken. I always paint with at least strength 15 or lower, okay? Because when you paint with something like 50%, you're going to end up with a mess, right? You end up with something that goes too strong, too fast. So with the dodge and burn tool, I really want to paint it in slowly, okay? So it's like layering your paint, right? So I'm going to turn this little green thing off so you can actually see where I'm painting. Okay? And I'm just going to darken the background like Anne suggested, right? So I'm just painting little by little, okay? Maybe even her shirt, because now her white shirt's kind of a little bright, and her arm here. Okay? So you get to decide what you're painting. And we've missed this sort of spot down in the bottom here. So there's my eagle eyes again, right, Rob? I've noticed this spot on the bottom, and I'm going to go back and fix it. Okay, so there, we're just darkening the background. Now once you hit close, okay, it's harder to edit. You can't really go back. You can undo, or you can dial it down. Okay, so if you decided that you've painted too much, you can just dial the amount down a little bit. But I'm going to go back and fix this color thing. Okay, so remember we masked this guy, so we got rid of the background, but I'm going to paint in over here because we've got this bright green thing in the bottom, and possibly even in between the benches here, in between the slats of the bench. And I missed that spot right there. All right, let's see how that looks. That's better. There we go. Perfect. All right, I'm going to do the same on this one. Okay, so sometimes you have to revisit some of your other edits. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure I get that one. There we go. Perfect. Okay, because what I was seeing was a bright green leaf, and it was catching my eye down there. Okay. Maybe even refine this one here. Yeah, make sure I get that. There we go. All right, so before, okay, so what's happening is you want to kind of avoid this shooting scenario because the background behind her is a lot brighter, and you see that I've had to do a lot of editing to tone that down or correct it. Okay, so when you are shooting, look for a location. You've put her in the shade, which is absolutely great, and she's got beautiful light on her face, okay? But you want to make sure that the background is also shady, because then you end up with this situation where it's super contrasty, and you end up with having to try and fix that or tone it down, right? So we've done a good job here, but when you're shooting, just be conscious of that and make sure that you're looking for that background that isn't quite as busy, okay? All right. Okay, let's see. Rob says she looks a little purple. Yes, she does look purple. I think that her hair actually is purple. Maybe Rita can answer that for us. Okay. Rob has a bee in his office. Manual mode. The other one I wanted you to share, Rob, was the one on. Oh, I forgot now. Portrait settings. 10 portrait settings, please, for camera settings. Okay. Thumbs up on the video, please, everybody. That's awesome. Okay, Nigel has a question. Do I only use Orton effect on portraits? No, not only, right? Sometimes I'll use Mystical, sometimes I'll use Orton, sometimes I'll use Soft to Focus, which I did here. But I find that Orton effect works really well on portraits, but I have used Orton effect on landscapes as well, right? So anything in that glow tool, there's Orton effect, there's soft focus, and then there's glow. All of them do slightly different things, right? So soft focus gives the overall image. You'll find that the highlights get a lot brighter and more glowy. Glow allows just the highlights to have glow, but the shadows aren't affected. So play with all of them and just see which one works on which image. So there is no hard, fast rule of this filter goes on this thing, okay? Because often I'll actually use some of the landscape filters like Golden Hour on portraits as well, okay? Okay, let me get back over here. All right, so now we are back in Lightroom. Let's do the same thing again as we did with the other one. Reset. And let's move them around so we can see the progress that we've made. Okay. All right, so there we go. So before, middle, after. Okay, so the first one was as shot. So overall, she looks a little bit flat, and the background is what grabs your attention, okay? Please show that article on watching your background as well, please, Rob, because it talks about looking at the image upside down, which we can do. The middle one, We've now toned down the background somewhat and punched her up a little bit. And then in the final one, we've given some nice glow and we've toned down the background even more, right? I might go in even farther on this one, Rita, because this one here, if I go in here, up here, there's this really bright highlight. You would use the erase tool. I would use the erase tool and just actually tone that down completely or erase it, right? Because my eye goes there. So if we go back and we look at the first one upside down, okay, where does your eye go? Okay, it goes to the background, right? If we look at the second one, better, still goes to the background and to her hands. Okay, can you see how her hands are brighter than her face, right? So that's a problem. You want to make sure you control where the light is going, right? Now that we look at this one upside down, now I'm looking at it this way, I still see her hands are really bright. So I might run a radial filter now that I'm back in Lightroom and just darken her hands. But can you see how that really changes the look of the image completely in terms of where the eye goes? Okay, so I'm just going to run a radial filter on here real quick. Okay, so see how I'm just darkening highlights to bring her hands down, like so. And I want to get that sleeve too. So I'm just going to make it a little bigger. I might even get her shirt. Right. Like so. All right. Now let's look at it upside down again. Right. See the difference that makes just toning the hands down, right? Still there's a lot of busyness going on in the background and we've toned it down a whole lot. So that comes back into play of you really want to watch your background when shooting, because look at how much work we had to do to get this, okay? We got there, but if you had a simpler background in the original shot without the brightness, you'd have a lot less toning down to do. Here is an example, okay? Right, so this is one that Holly submitted. We can work on this one actually, and you can see where the background is the same, right? So the people are in the shade as well as the background. Okay, versus this one that has the same problem. Okay, so when you look at this one, where does your eye go? Okay, your eye goes to the background. Okay, versus this one, your eye goes to the people. Okay, so we've got a lot easier job of editing this image than we do this one. Okay, but we are at, where are we at? We are at 1 hour and 40 minutes. So I think I'm going to save these ones for next week. We've done quite a few good things today. We didn't do as many images, but we covered a lot of different techniques, including replacing the sky and cloning a bunch of complex things out. So I'm going to stop there for today. Just a reminder to please submit images using the form in the description below the video. I would love to have some new images to work on. We're just about out. If you have what we are looking for, or what I'm looking for is an image that is good, but you want to make it better, okay? So things that are drastically out of focus or 2 to 3 stops under or overexposed, I can't perform miracles and fix those, right? I can punch it up a little bit and I can sharpen it to some degree, but what I really want to do is show you how to take your images that are already good out of the camera and make them that much better, okay? So all the images that we worked on today are good images, but they have a potential to be much better with a little bit of expert editing. So hopefully by watching every week, you're picking up some of these tips and you are becoming a photo editing expert as well. So until next time, now remember, we're going to see you on the 23rd of June this time, Wednesday evening, Mountain Standard Time. That live will be scheduled shortly, so make sure that you hit the waiting list and it'll be reminding you of when that's going to go live, Wednesday the 23rd. So we won't see you next Saturday. I will see you on the 23rd. So get outside, get some sun, and take care.